So have you had a nice sunny day up in Birmingham today?
It has been a very cold day.
Mm, yeah,
Yeah,
it's been
coldest one we've
fresh.
had for a while.
Yes, yeah, yeah. I'm in South Hertfordshire. We had a beautiful blue sky all day, but it was fresh. Um, and then tomorrow I'm off down to Farnborough. So not for the air show, for a board meeting. I'm down there and then back into town in the afternoon for what feels like very early Christmas drinks. But there's a surveyor that we do quite a lot of work with. So they're hosting an event in town tomorrow, which will be good fun.
Oh, we already had our Christmas party this weekend.
Oh, did you really? You got in early?
Oh, very early. Well, I'm away most of December, so
Oh,
we
you were,
didn't have a
yes.
choice. Yeah, we did have a choice.
Yes, yeah, which is good. And how's that arranged? Is that done as a collective, or does somebody get a budget and told to go and fix it,
Oh
and then everybody
no,
turns up?
as a collective, we let the team pick what you want to
Lovely.
do. And
Yeah.
this year was actually really fun. So we didn't do something typical where you go on a night out. We went to the Christmas markets. We had loads of good Indian food, and then we went to play like interactive darts, and it was really fun.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, something a bit different, not your typical way you dress up and it's all glam,
Yeah.
but just really fun, really fun.
Yeah. And it's funny. So within my business, we identified several years ago that there's a big age range. So we've got some guys in their 60s and we've got some teenagers trying to find an event that accommodates somebody so we've got 67. We've got a lady 67 who works in the business, and we have a fairly new joiner. She's 19. It's not easy. Trying to find something that a 19-year-old wants to do with a 67-year-old is quite challenging. So through the year, we have a social program. We do 5 or 6 different things through the year, and we try and do quizzes tend to go down quite well, which is good. We do various food and drink related events, but we've had to kind of be quite um, adept and light on our feet to make sure that we have things that suit everybody.
I bet I can imagine it must be a challenge.
It is.
We're lucky. We're lucky. Our age demographic is generally a lot younger than that, so it's not as
Yeah.
hard.
Yeah, no, it's like I say, it can be tricky at times. Anyway, I think what we'll do is we're a couple of minutes in. We've already had a decent number of people join us, so I'll introduce you. We always like to say that we don't sort of punish the punctual. So welcome everyone who's joined us. Our special guest tonight is Dr. Bobby Vandal, and Bobby is 3 years into opening his squat dental practice, which is no mean feat. For anyone who's ever started a business, you'll know how hard it is. If you've bought a business, still not easy, but it's not quite as tough as actually starting from scratch. So tonight, Bobby's going to take us through the challenges that nobody warned you about. And I think until you've lived through the situation, you just don't know what the sorts of things that could come at you. The early decisions that he made that's shaping his long term success. If you could do it again, what would you do differently? And I'm fascinated to hear what that will look like. Um, in the early days of a business, it sometimes, particularly with marketing and people and training and initiatives, it can feel a bit like you're throwing mud at the wall, and some of it sticks and some of it doesn't. So, Bobby will share with us the investments that have paid off and the ones that didn't. Um, and the last part is everything doesn't always go to plan, so you need to be resilient. And it's kind of how do you stay resilient through that initial period. So yeah, it'll be fascinating to hear from someone who's been at the coalface and done this in real time. So it's going to be a very interesting conversation tonight. What I'll do is Bobby's got a presentation to take us through. So I'm going to turn my camera and sound off so we can all focus on Bobby. And then I'll come back in at the end, Bobby, and then we'll take questions and answers. The question and answer box is going to be open for the whole session. So if you do have any questions, feel free to jump in, drop them in there, and then we'll pick those all up at the end. But yeah, for now, over to you, Bobby.
Great. Yeah, thank you for the introduction, Andy. Really appreciate it. And again, I really appreciate, the fact that you guys have let me come on and speak again. We did this webinar, actually, it must have been what, about a year after I opened my practice. And now it's fantastic to be back again, going through the journey later on, still standing, might have a few more gray hairs, but just to be able to share some more wisdom as to what we see, as to what worked, what didn't work, and how we can help other dentists not make the same mistakes that we made. So, again, massive thank you to FTA for me being here today. So I'll give a little bit more of an introduction, and I am the proud owner of Avenue Dental Practice in Leamington Spa. So we, as Andy said, just coming up to 3 years. We have a fully private practice. We have four associate dentists. We have a therapist, hygienist, and a big team, and we provide everything in-house. So orthodontics, implants, sedation, and everything is going super well. We are currently expanding. We've just put in planning permission to take our flats upstairs so we can go to 5 surgeries, plus have space for lab, separate decon, and staff space upstairs, which hopefully will come into fruition next year. And I'll share a little bit about myself, just really quickly and briefly, about my journey and how I ended up in the position that we are at the moment. So, back in the day, as a young child, uh, I was a very troublesome child, got expelled from school twice, not just once, and actually once due to my parents grassing me up. Um, and nobody ever thought that anything would come off the back of that. I then tried to get into university and passed my A levels and failed 4 times. So applied for dental school, didn't get in, and then took a gap year, getting the grades, and reapplied, and then actually got into dental school the next time round, and got into dental school and actually hated it. I didn't enjoy dentistry whatsoever. It was not a nice experience when I was at university. Didn't think it was for me. And I only really fell in love with it once I left university. Left university, did my VT year, and then found my home in a very lovely practice that was mixed NHS and private, and had an amazing principal and mentor who was willing to guide us and teach us in what we were doing. Spent around about 7 years in that practice until it got sold to a corporate. Once I got sold to the corporate, I became so disheartened with dentistry, I actually left completely and decided that dentistry is not for me. I can't do it anymore. Spent a year out looking at other avenues, different career options, and off the back of that, actually realized I do love dentistry. I love patient care. I just wasn't in the right environment to, help me fulfill my potential on what I wanted to do. So after a bit of a kick up the bum from my old principal and some of the people in my family, decided to set up a squat, which is what we did. And setting up the squat was a absolutely horrific process. A lot of things went wrong, a lot of mistakes made, a lot of money wasted. And off the back of that, we did set up. I learnt some resilience during that process. And now I'm fortunate enough to teach a lot of dentists, dozens of dentists all over the country, to help them set up their own practices, do it in the right way, and not go through all the pain, the hardship, and all the mistakes that I made when I was setting up. So, what I want to talk about is in the first instance, there's going to be lots of you on this webinar today, and I have a strong belief that every dentist reaches what I call the dentist dilemma. You hit a certain point in your career, and it's what I like to call the fork in the road. And you have to make a decision. Do I want to carry on as an associate, or do I want to make the decision to go into practice ownership? There is no right or wrong answer to this, but you have to understand where you sit. And if you're on this webinar tonight, I'm going to guess that the majority of you are leaning towards wanting to enter, practice ownership. And, I tell the story always of two dentists, Dr. Raj, Dr. Sarah, both graduated at the same time, both had the same aspirations, both wanted to have great careers clinically and have great lives off the back of that. But your paths can change massively. So Dr. Raj decided after 5 years, I buy a practice, I set up, I build my team, and off the back of that, I go into ownership. I've got leverage, I've got equity, and I can do lots of things after that. and I buy myself some freedom with a lot of hard work up front. Dr. Sarah, on the opposite hand, did the opposite, stayed as an associate, working all the way up until the end of their career, going home every single day, having a glass of wine, really unhappy, really unfulfilled, and really regretting the fact that they didn't do what they wanted to do. And I fully understand there is a whole bit in the middle of that where you can be an associate and you can have a great career as an associate. But like I said, most of you who are on this webinar are probably going to be stuck in this dilemma, figuring out which path do I take. But ultimately, for me, it is don't have any regrets. If you're going to get to the end of the end of your career, you don't want to have regrets and make the most of it. And often we can recover from most of it. So what I see is with dentists, and after teaching dozens of dentists who are setting up their own practices over the last year and a half as part of what we do with Squat Success, there are a certain number of things that hold them back from doing what they really want to do. And I distill this down into what I call the three decision-making infections, essentially. So the first one is the prestige virus. So this is where we make ego-driven decisions, and we make all these decisions based around what other colleagues are going to think of us, not because of what's going to benefit us in the long term. And we obsess over premium and luxury, and all of this stuff clouds our judgment. And social media has a massive influence over this. And I can give you a clear example about this from myself. So, when I was an associate, when I first started out in practice, I was working in a great practice with a lot of young men, same age, who were really into cars, and I wasn't really into cars. And I decided that I thought it would be a good decision to buy a car just because I wanted to fit in. Ended up spending about 70 grand buying a BMW M4. And really, if I look back now, thinking I actually could have bought a practice or set up a squat about 3 or 4 years earlier if I didn't have that debt lingering over me. And that was a clear example of what I call the prestige virus. So, clouded judgment, ego driven decisions. The second one is something I call the quick fix fever. So this is again something I see amongst a lot of associates who want to set up squats, and it is something that hinders your decision process in the fact that you are in such a rush to get out of your current position that you make the wrong decisions and you don't spend enough time doing enough research. You rely on your gut data, your gut instinct, and not proper data-driven decisions. And another prime example of the quick fix fever is around about 6 months ago, I received a message from a dentist who basically said, "Hi, uh, Bob, I set up a practice and I think I'm going to go bankrupt in about 3 months' time." I opened 3 months ago. And after having a conversation with this dentist, we looked at everything in detail, in depth, and that dentist just rushed. They were so unhappy with where they were. They went around, they drove, they found a site and thought yes. And within 3 months, they opened. They were doing their own marketing, didn't really understand anything about business or ownership. And it was purely just because they were so desperate to get out of their current situation. So sometimes you have to slow down to make really well-informed decisions and actually do proper research. And then the final one is the analysis paralysis syndrome. So this is around fear-driven decisions and fear of failure, letting opportunities pass. So another example of this is we have two dentists who joined Squat Success about a year and a half ago. And one dentist says, "Yes, I'm really motivated, want to open up a squat." And 6 months later, another conversation. "You've done your research?" "Yes." And this dentist has spreadsheets for spreadsheets, literally. And I'm not 100% certain, and I think I need to do more research. We have another dentist on the opposite hand who, within 3 months, just went and did it and opened their practice. They weren't waiting for 100% certainty. They weren't paralyzed, and they were willing to take that risk and do it, knowing that they can handle the worst case scenario. And we'll come back to that a little bit later on. So, with everything that we do in Squat Success and everything that I've learned from teaching, all the dentists that we have in Squat Success and learning from my experiences, their experiences, we can really distill it into three core components when you're setting up a squat practice. And this is what I call the three pillars of squat success. Number one is what we call the certainty compass. Number two is the A-team algorithm. And number three is the invisible waiting list. And if you can get these things right, then these three things will help you open a really, really successful squat practice. If you get them wrong, then you might end up in that situation where things go bad and you do have to close down. And it happens from time to time. It's very rare, but from what we know, if you nail these, you can make it work. So the first one is the certainty compass. And everything we're going to do when we're setting up in business, and this applies whether you're going to set up a squat or buy a practice or even any professional decision that you're going to make, you have to have a decision-making framework to answer certain questions when you're starting up a business. And when we're setting up a squat practice, there are three key questions we have to ask ourselves. And number one is what is our business model? Number two is what is the location where we're going to set up? And the third one is when are we going to execute this? That is the three most important questions when you're setting up a squat. So how do we build a framework for making better decisions around this process when we're setting up? And you know, when it comes to what I talked about, those three decision-making infections, all we have to do is ask these three questions and it gives us the answers to our decisions and helps us make better decisions. So what we talked about was, with the first one, if we ask ourselves, what is the patient benefit? So, when you're in that position where you've got prestige virus and I'm going to make an ego-based decision, ask yourself, what is the patient benefit? Was there a patient benefit to me, having that car in the first place? No. But if we're going to be more specific, we're going to set up a practice. Is there a benefit of me buying a £15,000 chair versus buying a £30,000 chair? What is the patient going to see? What are they going to benefit off the back of that? And does it really justify the cost of that? And when we're going to make those, prestige virus decisions, that's the only question we have to ask ourselves. Is there a patient benefit to it? Can we justify it? And that will lead you to the answer. The second one, when it comes to the quick fix fever, is what does the data actually say? So, can we provide concrete data for effective decision making? For example, if I'm going to set up a practice and that particular dentist that I spoke about didn't do enough research, didn't understand the demographics, didn't understand the local competition, they did not nowhere near enough research to allow them to have enough data to say this is a good decision or a bad decision. It was made off the back of the fact that they were so unhappy with where they were at that they just wanted to go ahead and do it. They drove around, saw a high street location, and this is something that happens really frequently. Hey Bob, I've seen this site, looks really good, loads of footfall, or where's your business plan? What's the data behind that? And often the answer is no. And you can't run off your gut feeling. And when you enter into the business space, and it's not our fault, again, we're not taught this as dentists, but we have to work off data. What does the data say? Does the data say yes or no? We go through a comprehensive research process when we're in Squat Success. If you want to set up in a new location, and off the back of that, we can objectively say, yes, this is good, or no, it is not good. And these are the reasons why. And often doing that research allows you to highlight loads of different opportunities in the marketplace that aren't being served. But if you haven't done that in the first place, how do you know? And then the final one, when it comes to the analysis paralysis syndrome, We're looking at, what is the worst case scenario? And this is a fantastic question for everybody to ask themselves when you're setting up a squat practice. If this fails, what is my backup plan? So the people who keep doing research, never take decisions, never actually go forwards, it's often because they can't answer this question or they're too scared to. And the ones who really succeed are the ones who can look at this objectively and say, look, at the end of the day, if I do this, I set my squat, this is what it's going to cost me. If I go back to being an associate dentist next week and I can make £250,000 a year being an associate, I can pay off my debt within a year and a half, 2 years. There was really no massive impact on my life. I can still, do whatever I want day to day, but you have to understand that in the first place. But if you know that, that's a much better starting position than not knowing or not have thought about it in the first place. But that's what's going to help you get over that hurdle. So you have to understand that right from the outset. So the second pillar we talk about in squat success is something called the A-team algorithm. So what we mean by this is that if we're a business, our businesses are not built on us as dentists, they are built on our teams. And this goes for most businesses, but in a dental practice specifically, we are actually the least most important person in our team. And the hardest thing in business is building a team from scratch, especially when we are dentists and we don't really have any prior experience of that, especially if we're an associate and you just turn up, you have the same nurse for 4 or 5 years, and then you go home at the end of the day. And if you get this right, this will exponentially grow your business. If you get it wrong, it will kill your business. And this is why this is, hands down, one of the most important things. The opportunity we have is when you're setting up a squat practice from scratch, is that we get to build our teams from scratch. We have an opportunity to choose who we want in our business and present that opportunity to them. When you're buying an existing practice, you don't have that because you have to take on an existing team. So let's have a little look around how we recruit and how is it done in dentistry at the moment. And this is what I like to call the recruitment reframe because most people think about recruitment when they're setting up a squat practice far too late in the process. It's almost an afterthought. I've got my building, I've got CQC, I've got my finance, everything's going well. And then I'm about a month before we're going to open. Oh my God, I forgot I need to get people in my business. How am I going to find them? Where do I get them from? And we need to actually reframe this as being actually, one of the most important facets of opening our squat practice. And the way I like to reframe it is it's not recruitment. We are marketing an opportunity. It is an opportunity for driven, motivated individuals to come into our business, to work with us, for us, to build something bigger and better, and our opportunity to bring in the best in the business. Whereas, like I said before, often with squat owners, it's an afterthought and it's not given enough presence. So, if we just have a look at this here, and if you want an Indeed today, you're going to see a typical ad for a dental nurse when you're setting up a squat practice or even existing practices. And I will read it, and this is what it's going to read. And you can do this today, tonight, and I guarantee you're going to see 95% of ads look exactly the same. Growing dental practice seeks qualified dental nurse, must have GDC registration, minimum 2 years experience, must be proficient with computer systems and digital radiography, experience with whatever software it is that you use, full-time position, occasional Saturday mornings, competitive salary based on experience. Please send CV, references required. If we were marketing to patients in the same way, That same ad would read, patients required, must have teeth and money, or no teeth and even more money. Call for the best price, instant appointments available. Literally like for like. And we would never ever market to our patients like that. So why do we do it when we're trying to recruit? So if we flip that on its head, when you're thinking about setting up a practice and you want to be recruiting, why not market it as an opportunity? And we can rewrite that as something as simple as this. And this hits lots of different factors on different levels. And we're really speaking to these people on an emotional level now. Are you ready to fall in love with dentistry again? A lot of people who work in dentistry, nurses, we all know there's a recruitment crisis, don't love dentistry anymore for lots of different reasons. But let's ask them the question, do you want to? A lot of them have healthcare at the heart of what they do. Remember why you became a dental nurse, to make a difference, to be valued, to grow professionally, but somewhere along the way, corporate dentistry turned your passion into just another job. We're a brand new practice opening in wherever you are, built on a simple belief: happy team equals happy patients. What makes us different? You'll be part of creating something special from day one. Your voice will matter, help shape our systems, our patient journey. Learn and grow. We're investing a lot more money than the industry average in our development of our team because we care about you. Work with the latest technology, be appreciated. Why did our last join us? Sorry. So let's give them some social proof. So this is just my example, but you can use something that's relatable to you. And this is literally what one of my nurses said. I got tired of office politics and being treated like a number. And here I'm part of my family. And I didn't put this in there, but she also took a pay cut to come to us off the back of that. If you're a qualified dental nurse who believes that dentistry can be better, let's talk. And yes, we offer a competitive salary and benefits, but if that's your only motivation, we're probably not the right fit. What we're doing with that last sentence is we're not making money the priority. We really want people who are dedicated and have the right attitude. And off the back of that, we will pay them more money, more than the industry average. But we don't want them coming just because of that. Because if somebody else offers them a pound more or 50p more, they're going to be the first ones that run away. So address that at the end. And then you can take that another level further. So when we're thinking about interviewing people, we have a traditional interview and what we call experiential interviews. So with a traditional interview, most people in dentistry, we're going to call somebody, ask them to come in for an interview, and we're going to ask them the same 5, 10 questions that they've been asked a million times before, which they have rehearsed answers for. And how, again, do we flip that on its head? So what we're really trying to assess is when we're trying to build a team is what is their attitude, but also how adaptable are they? Think about the skill sets that we need in dental practice. If I say to these people, come in for an interview at 7 o'clock in the morning, and they say, yes, we can make it, what does that tell me about their attitude? I might not actually get them in at 7 o'clock in the morning, but if they say yes, I know for a fact that they are determined and they actually want to be a part of what we do and they've got a great attitude. Whereas if I just sit them in a room and call them in at 10 o'clock in the morning and ask them the same questions over and over again, who are you? What's your goals for the next 5 years, etc., etc. It's boring. They know the answers, and we don't really learn anything off the back of that. So there's a huge amount that we can do to really find the people who are determined, who we really want in our businesses going forwards. And then, one of the final points to end on this is, and why the A-team algorithm is so important is because if we were to work out the true cost of hiring the wrong people in your business, it is significant. It is huge. And the reason why I say this is I've experienced it in my practice because when I set my squat, I didn't have a clue about hiring or recruiting people. And it was just a case of whoever wants to come, I will take you because I need you. However, what you fail to realize is if you let one bad apple in, If you work out financially, and it's hard to put a definite figure on this, but if you get a bad apple in, the impact that they're going to have on the rest of your team, their morale, and the productivity, and how that goes down off the back of that, that is going to cost your business a huge amount of money. And that's why there needs to be so much more focus on this aspect when you're setting up in business. And then the third pillar of squat success and what makes the squats who we work with really successful is a concept we call the invisible waiting list. And what we mean by that is how do we get patients through our doors? So the biggest fear for dentists who are thinking about opening up a squat is how do I get bums on my seats? How do I get patients through the door? And in squat success, generally speaking, most practices are opening with 300 to 500 patients waiting at the door before they've even done any form of proper external paid marketing. And how do you make that happen? And most people, again, have this the wrong way around, and this is because of the marketing industry and what they teach us, and it's wrong. So the way we view it is we're looking at traditional marketing versus what we call community building. Um, Everything else, off the back of the invisible waiting list is, we have to have a trust timeline. The next thing is there has to be something called the authenticity advantage. And then the third thing is the edutainment edge, which is building your personal brand. The second two are more around social media and personal brand, but the first one is the most important one. So this one here is how traditional marketing works and how marketing agencies will sell it to you. And this is how dentists generally think about marketing. So they think we have to spend money, we open our practice, and then we try to build trust with our patients. So you do all the hard work up front, you put all your focus and your efforts into building your practice, getting it open, and then getting the patients in afterwards. We think we have to then do that by going to an agency, building loads of trust, and trying to do that on the back end. With a community approach, what we're trying to do is build trust first. If you've built the trust first, you can open your practice and you've got a waiting list of patients who are waiting to come and see you. So what we see in squat success is the most successful practices, and they're all successful, but the most successful ones who are doing seven figures plus in year one, two plus, are the ones who really hammer that community approach. They hammered their personal brands, they hammered social media, and they had waiting lists of patients who just wanted to come because they spent so much time building that trust up front. But even if you don't have that, you can do that today. And that's one of the biggest takeaways. There is nothing stopping you from starting to build trust with your audience, with your patients right now if you're thinking about setting up a practice. Why have to do it afterwards and then pay agencies thousands of pounds with unpredictable results when you can do it organically right now? And then when it comes to thinking around, the differences versus, social media, organic, and, using professional agencies and running advertising and paying for advertising, I'm a massively strong believer in something called the authenticity advantage. So you can pay agencies to come in and record professional adverts for you, and they can run them on social media and they can make you look really good. But your authentic presence makes people trust you. And you might have heard this phrase before, but people buy people. It is as simple as that. If you're going to open a squat practice and you're scared to be on camera, you shouldn't be doing it because people want to know who you are. People buy people. They want to know who you are. They want to know that they trust you. They want to, like the content that you're putting out. And we get that all the time in the practice. One of the biggest comments that we get is when we see a lot of nervous patients, we do a lot of sedation, a lot of work with implants. And when they come to our practice, often it is You are literally what we saw on social media. You're no different. And that is because it's authentic. We don't fake it. We don't pretend to be anything that we're not. But when they come, they see that for themselves. And that enhances that level of trust, which is what allows us to do what we need to do. And, again, coming back to this trust factor, people trust people more than anything else. People will trust seeing a face behind it more than your brand and just a name behind it. They want to know who the dentist is going to be. We work in a profession where we are so up close with people that you know, it's very invasive. It's scary. A lot of our patients are nervous, they're anxious, and being able to build content that's personalized, really helps them to feel who we are as people and allows us to break down those barriers before they come to us. And all of it is building relationships. We're building that relationship before they get into our doors to make it much easier when they actually get here, and you have to get your whole team involved in that. And then the final thing I would add to that is when it comes to personal branding, what I say to everybody is if you're thinking about setting up a squat practice, personal brand is massive. It is huge and it is very underrated. And as I said before, some of the most successful practices we have are built on the back of big personal brands. There's pros and cons to that, and we can go into that at a later date. But most people get it confused in that building your personal brand isn't about becoming an influencer. It's about letting potential patients see the real dentist behind the mask. It's nothing to do with ego. It is just to let people know this is who I am, this is what we do. And when I open my practice, I want you to come and see me. And there's already a little bit of trust then behind that, which makes your life a lot easier than having to pay for a hell of a lot of advertising after that. And then when it really comes to setting up your squat practice in the long run, we can distill this into a checklist, which is, what I call the reality check. And you've got to make sure that you can hit all these factors in order to open up a successful practice. So, first of all, can you articulate, the business benefit, the patient benefit of what you want to do? Is it an ego-based decision that you just want to set up a practice because you've seen your friends do it, you've seen it on Instagram, other people are doing it, or is it really because you want to do it? And I want to do it because I want to help patients and I really want to build a great business off the back of it, and there's a business benefit to that. Have you spent enough time gathering data, building a business plan off the back of that? And if you've spent less than 3 months doing that, you can't go down this journey. Do you know your worst case scenario? And do you have a contingency plan? Everything we do in Squat Success is about safety and security. It is making sure that you understand that you're not going to put yourself into financial ruin. And if you can't answer those questions, you can't go down this journey. But you have to ask yourself that. Do you have enough money available in the beginning stages? You have to have a certain amount of capital in order to open a squat practice. You've got to have enough money in the bank. It's going to cost you about three to £400,000 to open this practice. You need deposit funds. And also, you have to ask yourself the question, if you don't have that, do you really have a high enough value clinical skill set to be able to do this journey in the first place? And if you can't gross that kind of money or be able to save that kind of money, there's two things behind that. Either you don't have the financial stability or the financial education to be able to save enough money to do that, or you don't have the skill set to earn enough money to generate that in the first place. So you've got to have a really good understanding of where you sit with that right at the beginning. And then, are you willing and visible to be visible, sorry, and market yourself? Just what we were talking about, with social media, etc. If you don't have that level of confidence, it's a scary journey. You've got to be able to have that confidence to get yourself out there, put your face at the forefront of everything. And if you don't, again, it might not be the right thing for you at the moment. There are certain things you can do to help yourself get over that, but it is a big factor. And the final point, and again, one of the most important points is you got to really understand this is going to be one of the hardest things you ever do. Um, Whether you like it or not, it is going to consume you for the first couple of years. As you know, anybody who's ever opened a squat will tell you, and Andy will tell you that after speaking to numerous dentists. It doesn't last like that forever, but in the initial phases, it is bloody hard work, to get to that point. And, off the back of that, I just want to share. So, what I've been doing for the last 3 or 4 months is really writing a book about all my learnings, all the learnings from all the dentists in squat success, about how to set up a really successful squat practice and distilling all of that knowledge into something that you can take away and you can actually action it and do it. And that's the Dental Freedom Blueprint. And we're writing it live. So if you want access to it, you get access to chapters as they're being written, and you get to ask questions off the back of that. So before the final book gets published, you can ask anything you want and it will get edited, and you can see everything that's in there at the moment. And if you want to get access to that, all you have to do is just scan that QR code and you'll receive a link and you can start reading it straight away. Everything we've discussed today, plus loads more. And, hopefully it will help you make much better informed decisions around setting up a squat in the future. But the most important chapter in that book is the whole chapter at the beginning dedicated to putting you off doing this because you have to get over that hurdle in the first place and you have to understand that for yourself. Like I said, if you want to go down this journey, it is fantastic. It is the most rewarding thing I have ever done in my life, ever. And the ability to be able to build a team and the fulfillment you get off the back of that, and being able to treat the patients we do, do things the way we want to do. For me, the hard work was worth it, but that's not the case for everybody. And you have to understand where you sit on that scale. And yeah, just want to say again, a massive thank you to everybody and a massive thank you, Andy, Chris, FTA, for letting me come on and share that today.
Not at all. Cheers, Bobby. That was fantastic. It was good, and I think something that resonates as you went through it is you talked a lot about authenticity, and it just comes through so strongly that you genuinely you've kind of got the scars, you've had the laughs, you've got the real business that sits on the back of that work that you've done, and that I think that really shines through in terms of like the where you're at and what you're doing. We've had some questions coming, so
Yeah.
let's get those underway because we've got a few minutes. Um, Oh, this is an interesting one. How would you deal with opening a squat practice when you are keen, but your dentist wife is completely against owning a dental business?
When you are what? Sorry, you are.
You are keen, but your dentist wife is completely against owning a dental business.
Oh, but are you a dentist yourself? Both dentists or just dentist wife and non-dentist partner?
I'm not sure. If the person who asked the question could let us know if you're a dentist as well, that probably would be helpful. And I guess just as we're waiting for that to come through, I guess the context here is quite often, and Bobby will see this, that some dentists, both dentists, so there we go. So sometimes we do see situations where you have either husband or wife who's a non-dentist, and then the other one being the clinician. And sometimes that can work really well because you can get that business input, which is powerful. And then you have somebody focused on the clinical side. Most situations look like Bobby, where you have to be the business person and you have to be the clinician as well. And that can be quite challenging. But it sounds like in this situation, we got husband and wife dental team, both dentists. It sounds like the husband is quite keen, but the wife is not so keen. So
Yeah, so yeah, yeah. I mean, we see it in Squad Success all the time. So we've got loads of people in the group where you've got either both dentists who are setting up the squat together, or one dentist and one non-dentist. And the biggest thing I would say with that is with all those people, all those dentists, non-dentists, they're all on the same wavelength. So they all agree they want to do it. You can't force anybody to do something that they don't want to do. And, ultimately, if your wife doesn't want to do it, it is not a good decision because, that person is not going to be happy off the back of, your decision. It has to be a mutual decision. You can't force anybody to do what they don't want to do, but why would you want to put somebody under distress and so much stress and pressure, no matter what you can do to help that, if they didn't really want to do it in the first place?
Mm. And I think also, I've not set up a dental practice, but I've set up many, like, other businesses. And I think the commitment and work and stress required in setting up a practice or a business is quite significant. And I think if you do have a partner that's not with you on that journey, you don't want that to then spill over into your domestic life. So I think it's one of those ones of being aligned to start with, because it is going to be, you're listening to Bobby's story, there's bumps coming in the road. It's not going to be easy and straightforward. So if you don't have, your friends and allies around you, that could be quite a difficult time. We've had
Yeah,
another.
and I was at a course recently where I spoke to a group of dentists, and there was a fair few in that group, more than I would have, liked to have seen that had actually been divorced.
Mm,
And it was through the work. But they were
yeah,
most of them ex-practice owners. And I was
yeah.
like, wow. This is, and then it just goes to show, how stressful it can be, how much a toll it can take on your life. And
Mm,
that's why I say, more importantly, if you're going to go down that road, you've got to be on the same wavelength.
absolutely. Got another one in. Looking to set up a squat in a high street with an existing long-established practice. Is there much friction, animosity from existing businesses in your experience?
Yes, a hell of a lot. Yeah, horrific. Oh yeah, yeah. And you got to be prepared for it. There will be animosity. There will be, people who will, come for you. People who will talk bad about you, about what you're doing. And this is one of the things that goes back to building resilience. At the end of the day, my attitude is, we will work with you, and we'd rather build businesses together. My attitude is, look, at the end of the day, there is enough of a population here, for everybody to do well. It's as simple as that. People are going to be, hateful to you, spiteful. That is going to happen. We've experienced it a huge amount, where we are. And, the way we deal with it is it's fine. At the end of the day, we'll still reach out to you and we'll still have a conversation. We'll still want to work with you in some capacity. It's no sweat off my back. Just be nice to them. At the
Mm,
end of the day,
I think that says us.
our work speaks for itself.
Yeah, I think that says so much more about them than you, Bobby, doesn't it? I think if people go down a slinging mud path, as opposed to, you haven't got to be best friends, but there can be mutual respect. And as you say, when you look at how many people in the UK are actively visiting the dentist and registered to go to the dentist, another dental practice open up does not swamp the market. It doesn't create an issue. But it's good to know and be prepared that there is likely to be some friction and animosity coming your way, because at least you can then be prepared for that. We've had a
Yeah.
couple of others coming as well. Looking to set up a squad. Oh no, we just had that one. That one's been done. Can you give an example of what kind of research should one be doing when choosing location?
Yeah, yeah, 100%. So when we're looking at locations, the first thing you got to do is write your business plan. So you understand what type of practice you want to build. And then when it comes to being a bit more specific than that, what we do as part of our research process is really look, if I've got a location, I'm looking at this particular area, I want to know every single practice within a 10, 15-mile radius of me. I'm going to ring them, I'm going to go in and see them, or I'm going to get family or friends to go in and see them. And I want to know every single detail about that practice. What was the customer service like? How do they answer the phones? Are they doing all the treatments that they say they're doing? If they're doing implants, do they have a CT scanner? Do they not? Am I having to go another 20 miles to go and get my implant done? Is it a visiting implant guy that comes in and does that? Are they doing emergency? Are they doing out of hours? The list is endless. There's a whole spreadsheet which we have. off the back of that research, then we can pull the data together to say, look, yes, this is what we can do. They're doing this really well. We can do this better. Or are they all incredible and there's no opportunity here? How quick can I get a new patient exam in
Mm.
NHS private only? And then pricing as well goes on top of that. I mean, there's huge amount that goes into that. But you got to understand all that data to know where you sit in the market, what you want to do. Does it fit? Is there an opportunity? Or is there gaps that you can fill and put into your business model?
That sounds like a really useful spreadsheet, that Bobby. Are banks happy to lend to squat practices? If so, what sort of guarantees do they ask for?
Yes, banks are, and you can probably answer that better than me with FTA finance.
In fact, we were actually talking about this morning, and I mean, since Bobby started 3 years ago, the conditions have actually got a lot better for people setting up squats than it was. Back in Bobby's day, it was kind of like if a bank would give you 50%, you'd done really well. Now the banks are treating it. It's not materially different than buying an existing dental practice. They will lend, 70, 80%. The interest rates are getting quite generous. You don't really need to put any security in. They'll do it on an unsecured basis. But the key thing about the bank support is when you ask a bank to lend you money and you're buying an existing dental practice, there's your experience, which is important, but they've got a track record of a dental practice. They look at the financial accounts the last 3 years, and there's a kind of rule of thumb that says if you just keep doing what you're doing, you're going to kind of get what you get. So if you can just keep performing as it has been, then the bank says, does that mean we're going to get our money back? And in most cases, it means they will. Where you approach a bank for a squat and you work with somebody like Bobby and you end up with a great business plan, what the bank have got is they've got a business plan, which frankly is just an idea, and then they've got you. So you being able to demonstrate that you're a competent person who, on balance, is going to give this a good go is important. So your CV may, at the moment, be very heavily geared around your clinical skills and what CPD courses you've done and how you've been optimizing your latest composite because you went on 3 courses last year. What the bank are going to be interested in is seeing a slightly broader range of skills. So if you have been on any communications courses or if you've been involved in, as Bobby was saying about building your personal profile, building your personal profile and your personal brand is demonstrating your commitment to developing skills beyond clinical. So just bear in mind, if you can build a CV which is not heavily clinically based with a business dimension to it, coupled with a business plan, that's going to be attractive to the banks. But the banks are out there, and there's a number of banks out there. There's HSBC, there's Lloyd's, there's Barclays, there's NatWest. There's a range of banks out there who are keen to help you. One from me, Bobby. You were talking about what was it? You were saying about kind of when you do this, and I was thinking about is there an optimal time in life when you should do this? Because I guess you qualify, you come out of dental school, you go into FD, you kind of just relieved that you're not living off a dental student loan anymore, which is nice for the first couple of years. And then you start to build some clinical skills, and then you get the idea you might want to own a business. And running alongside that, you might have got a partner, and you might get married, and you might have kids, and you get a mortgage, and suddenly as you get older, you have this kind of invisible baggage, which is just life that builds up around you. Going to your slide about kind of the things you need to prepare, like, what's your plan B? What's the worst case scenario? If it doesn't work out, where do you go and do? Many people in life get to a stage where they do have a mortgage, they do have kids, and the responsibilities on them become quite broad. So, in your experience, is there an optimal point in life where people do this, perhaps ideally before they get too much personal responsibilities and commitments, because it's less stressful for them to do it? But how do you, is there a mismatch between that with having the clinical experience, the business experience, and the confidence? And
Yeah,
that's a bit
no,
of a
no.
that's a bit of a mixed bag
So I think,
question,
yeah,
that.
yeah, no, no, no. It's a great question, and I think the biggest thing is on the front end, there is a minimum. Like me personally, I think you should never go down this route if you're not 5, 6, 7 years minimum out of university.
Mm,
And because there is a huge amount that you don't know yet. You haven't got enough clinical experience, you haven't been on, clinical education to do high value work, you haven't worked in enough practices to see what practice life is really like, work with different teams and got that experience. And also, over that time period, you're building communication skills
Yeah.
with your patients, with the teams as well that you work with. So, for me personally, you have to have that baseline. And also, during that time period, most people don't have enough money. I have had some
Mm,
people in that time period who said, actually, my family have got the money. Can I do it? And for me personally, I'm like, no, because you might have the financial basis, but you don't have the other skill sets that you've built to do that at this point in time.
mm,
Anything after that, my opinion is if you want to do it, there is no right time.
yeah.
Life gets in the way. We all have kids, we have family, there's going to be deaths, there's going to be all sorts that goes on, mortgages, kids going to university. Once you get past that 5, 6, 7 year barrier, my opinion is the sooner the better if you
Right.
fulfill the rest of that criteria.
Yeah. Well, you've got the energy.
Yeah,
You
while
can't.
you got the
You
energy,
become an
your
old bloke
brain got the
like me.
energy.
You haven't got
Yeah,
the chutzpah for
yeah, yeah, yeah,
it.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, well, my attitude personally, look, at the end of the day, do I really want to be grinding at this level when I'm, in my 50s, 60s? No.
Yeah.
I'd
Yeah.
rather do it now. So when I get to that point, I've got the equity, I've got the leverage, and I can relax and I can spend that time with my kids as they're adolescents and actually be there for them, at that time.
Mm. Thinking back to the beginning, before you did this, you were a dentist, so the majority of your time was spent clinically. What's the split that you're at now, 3 years in, between clinical and non-clinical work? And then can you overlay that where the joy sits? Do you enjoy the business side? Do you more or less so than the clinical side?
Yeah, so my working week at the moment is 2.5 days clinical, 2.5 days non-clinical. But in all fairness, I'll work most weekends as well on top of that. But that's because we have
Yeah,
squad
the old
success.
9 day working week. I know it.
Yeah, yeah, we have squad success kind of overlaid on top of that. So, for me, my answer is for everybody who's set up a squat practice, no matter what, you can't work 5 days a week clinical. You have to have a certain, remit, an element of taking time out to learn about your business, what's going on behind closed doors, and understand that. You might not want to be the business person as such long term, but in the short term, you have to understand it and
Hmm.
you've got to have an overview of it.
I
So,
think that's I think that's fairness, right? And it's interesting from my experience in terms of talking to clients who are towards the end of their ownership experience, they're looking to sell. Um, it's normal that we see people working something like 3.5 clinical days. They would have probably started at something like 4.5 at the beginning,
yeah,
and then they'd have wound themselves back. And actually, truth be told, many of them perhaps could drop an extra day. But many of them still really enjoy the patient experience. They really still enjoy doing that clinical work. We've got one more question coming that we'll just sneak in because we're running close to time. How easy is it to get an NHS contract for a squat practice?
yeah, yeah, not easy.
That was easy. That was quick.
Yeah, it's not easy. In all fairness, it's not something that we deal with massively because all of our sports are fully private. And from a business point of view, for me, it's a hindrance to my business, and I would rather not have one. And we have that opinion in Squat Success. I do have friends who have mixed practices, and they live by that, and they like that as part of their business. But in terms of getting a new contract, that is down to knowing the right people, and you can only get one when there's tenders out for it. And
Yeah,
there are people out there in the community that will do that for you. But my other question is really the bigger question is, do you really want that as your business model going forwards?
yeah, yeah,
And you've got to have a really strong answer for that, knowing what I know about private practice and the squats that where we work at the moment. Why would you want that?
yeah, yeah. Another question that I can probably grab: if the dental surgery I'm looking to purchase is valued at £1.5 million, how much capital do I need to have available in the bank to secure financing? So, at the moment, banks require about a 10% deposit. That's normal. So that would be about £150,000 on your 1.5 million. It would then make sense to have probably another 20 or 30,000 available, which would cover your legal and accountancy fees, something in that order. There are some banks now who are slowly creeping back towards doing 100% finance, but I don't think it will be at the 1.5 million level. So the average practice in the UK at the moment is around about 850,000. And the banks are comfortable around there. But if you're looking at 1.5 million, I'd budget for a 10% deposit, so 150,000, and then have another 20 or 30,000 in addition to that, so that you can cover out your expense, your legal expenses. Got another one. Apologies, I came in late. That's okay. No need to apologise. How much monthly marketing budget is needed to get a squat practice up and running?
Oh, yeah, great question. And ultimately, it really depends on how much work you did up front. So if you follow the principles, what we said, so we've got people in Squat Success who spend zero and are doing seven figures in year one and don't spend a penny on marketing. And that's done because they've got personal brand and they spent a year or two developing that prior. You've got people like myself who had none of that, and I set up my practice from scratch. And we typically spend around about £5,000 a month on paid marketing for everything. Um, that is, some people say that's a lot of money. Some people say it's not a lot of money. I don't practice spending, 30, 40 grand a month on marketing. For me, it is ROI. What do we get off the back of that? And does it pay for itself? And yes, it does. But also, for it to pay for itself, you've got to have every system set up in your practice to make sure that it works. You've got to have a front of house team that can answer the phones, make sure that they're responding to inquiries straight away. You've got to have CRM systems, you've got to have branding, and the whole ecosystem has to work as one. And if it
Mhm.
does, then there's no problem with paying that for marketing because you'll get the money off the back of it. But, I made that mistake in the fact that I wish that when I first started as a dentist, I just wish I built my personal brand because I wouldn't have to pay for it in the first place.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's what the substitute cost is for, isn't it?
yeah,
Doing that hard work beforehand, and that's that. If you can take a back swing and do that perhaps for a year or two before you then have your own practice, you've already got that profile to build on. We'll do our very last question, Bob. We just have one more coming. I know we're over time, but I'd like to try and get this one in if we can. Do you think it would be a good idea to work as an associate part time while establishing your squat practice to ensure stable income?
yeah. So the answer to that is it depends on what your associate income is. And also, this works in both ways. So if you're thinking in that mindset, you don't have the confidence that your squat's going to work. So you have to have a serious think about can I make it work and what have I got to do to make that happen. Alternatively, if you're doing implants and you're working, one day every 2 weeks and you're making about 7, 8 grand a month, that is massively beneficial, but it's not a huge weight off the days you offer in your squat practice. So if it's general dentistry and you're making, £400, 500 a day, no, go all in on your squat. If you've got something where you're doing high value work and you're making 3, 4, 5 grand a day, then yes, it can be worthwhile because it's less time for you. So you can still do more time in your squat, but less days in your other practices, but you're still making a lot of money off the back of that, which helps your squat. But personally, you got to go all in no matter what. And also, a lot of people ask, do I need to open it 5 days a week or 6 days a week? And the answer is yes. Even if you're not there, somebody has to be in that building that time while you're open. Somebody's got to be answering the phones, seeing patients, inquiries, consults. Whether you're there or not, it has to be open. And
No,
that's
I
more
love
of
that. I
that,
love
that's a
that.
lot of that is a mindset thing.
Well, a lot of what you're talking about is you're setting yourself up for success. The assumption is it's going to work. So I'm going to commit my time to it. I'll be available for patients, and then you need to fit it by all the things that you've talked about. But if you go into it tentatively, and perhaps you're in a practice 2 or 3 days a week, and you just turn up to your practice 1 or 2 days a week within the local community, they see the lights off quite a lot. Has it really opened? Oh, it's only open on Thursdays. Well, the other practice is open all week. I can kind of go there when it suits me. I completely get it. And I think you're right. And I think generally, as a general life principle, the things we focus on, the things we give attention, tend to go quite well. And if we don't give it all the attention and we don't focus on it, then it's always kind of a side gig. And something like this, it requires so much of you in terms of money and resources and everything. You've got to put everything in the pot.
It's also like it's also time with your team. So even if you don't
Mm,
have patients in, who's training them?
mm,
Like that's valuable time where you can be training them, and we don't see the long-term effect on the income based on that. So you might think if I work in my practice, I'm still making £500-600 a day, or £1,000 a day, whatever it is. But actually, if I was in my squat, training my team to do what they need to do, or giving them that time, actually 3 months later, I might be making 3-4 grand a day off the back of that.
mm. Bobby, that was wonderful. Thank you. We've run over, but we got through all the questions, which is good. Really enjoyable. Really enjoyable. Like I've heard you talk several times before, but I always take a lot from it. There's always things in there that you can kind of either incorporate into the way that we approach things, or with clients that we talk to, which is great. I strongly recommend people get the book when it comes out. I love the fact it's going to come out chapter by chapter, so people can kind of build it as they go, which is really good. What's the best way for people to get in touch if they want to have a chat? I know you're on Instagram and LinkedIn.
Yeah, Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, yeah, whatever
You're
that.
not a hard guy to track down, are you?
Sorry.
You're not a hard guy to
Yeah,
track down.
yeah, yeah. I'm not that hard to track down. But yeah, the biggest thing is the book is open. We've already got about 8 chapters live at the moment, so you can go and read that straight away. We release them every 2 weeks. The next Squat Success event is going to be in February, 6th and 7th, and that's when we're going to release the full book. So by then we've got the feedback, and if you want to contribute towards that, just join now. You get access to it. But at that event, you'll get the hard copy, plus a whole load more.
Brilliant. Lovely. Thank you very much indeed, Bobby. Thank you very much to everyone who's joined us as well. And yeah, have a good rest of your evening, and we'll speak soon.
Thank you.
Lovely. Cheers, all.